Hey YouTube, Scapegoat here, and today we have the January 2020 ban list. So yeah, it came out earlier today. I've already looked at it, so I'm pretty much just going to go over, give my opinions on the list, and pretty much that's about it. Right off the bat, we can see this is in effect until March 30th, 2020. So that's the day right before April 1st when we get the Master Rule 4 revised, when we can special summon like crazy from our extra deck. So that's pretty interesting. We'll probably get the list right before then, obviously, to welcome in Master Rule 4 revisions. So without further ado, let's just jump into the list. And obviously we can see right here we have Orcust Harporer. Not the hit I would have expected. A lot of people are expecting either Orcust Babel, maybe a semi to Harporer, or some hit to Galatea. But Harporer to 0, that's pretty severe. They can't spam as much as they used to, but the deck is certainly still playable. They just need a lot more extenders to go off. And especially when Girsu comes out, Mech Knight Girsu in April, it's going to be a little easier for them to go off. They still have the 1-card combo, and it pretty much nets them the same type of board that they normally would have gotten. Just not as many special summons, obviously. So I think it's a good hit for now. It's going to hold them over, and we'll have to see what they do in the April list to kind of tame it again because of Girsu. But that's pretty much my thoughts on Harporer. And then we go to Thunder Dragon Colossus. I think a lot of people saw this either going to 1 or Hawk going to 1, but a lot of people did not think it would get banned. That was probably something more for the April list when Nemesis comes out around that time frame. Because of Corridor, I think, can special summon out of hand, return a card from Banish, and then turn into a Thunder Dragon. So, but I do think that'll kind of tame down Thunder Dragon a little bit. They obviously still have their combos and they can go off, but I think they're kind of more fragile now. Electromite is certainly a very unexpected hit to most. I don't think this was on anybody's list. If that, there were a few people that might have had it, but nobody who seriously considered Electromite. That's pretty crazy of a hit. So Pendulum is pretty strong of a mechanic, so it's understandable that they want to kind of nerf Pendulum, and Electromite kind of hits all of them across the board. Especially, I think Endymion was the popular variant right now. But I kind of like the hit. Pendulum gets kind of annoying at times. But we have next Ib, the World Challenge Justicar, and I think that is a fantastic hit. It wasn't on my list. I think I was hitting the starters that turn into Ib, but hitting Ib in general is probably a better idea. It's a starter, it helps you go off. It's just a very degenerate card for combos, so I very much appreciate it. Tempest Magician, obviously for the FTK, I know that was on my list. For when I made a ban list video. Tempest Magician's obviously just using a FTK variant, so that's definitely something to get rid of, because Konami does not want FTKs in the game. They don't want consistent FTKs that can top. Outer Entity Afterthought, obviously very consistent way to make your opponent not play Yu-Gi-Oh, so that's definitely a good hit, and it kind of tames down Lunalite into the future. I don't really think Lunalite's that big of a problem, but in Master Rule 4 they kind of get a little crazier, so it's kind of good to just get rid of that for now. Mirage Tally was another hit that I don't think a lot of people saw coming. I think most people would have thought of maybe hitting Spinny or maybe Foxy, maybe to 1 or something to that regard, but Mirage Stallion kind of like hinders their combo play. There's obviously ways around it, and I think some people are even starting to use Dante just to fill up their graveyard and do other things. But I certainly think it's a strange hit, but however, from what they're doing with all of these other decks, it makes sense for them to kind of nerf all the other decks around them. because obviously if you're nerfing Orcus, Thunder Dragon, Striker, Salamangreat becomes a bigger deck. So they're kind of just evening the playing field for all of the other decks to come back to the top. So slapping everything on the wrist to increase playability of all of their decks. So the next card we have is Brilliant Fusion, and I think there are some cards, especially with the Predator Plant cards, that can search out and still combo out and do certain scenarios of combos. I didn't really consider this in my head, but it's just a card that nobody really wants around anyway, because Brilliant Fusion, additional normal summons, pretty powerful. Obviously Nightmare Goblin and cards like that that provide additional normal summons are always on this list usually. But that's really it for that. Engage, I think a lot of people saw this either getting semied now and limited in April. I don't think many people realistically saw it getting banned. I know a lot of people wanted it to, but realistically probably the best case scenario is 1, but we got a best case scenario and a 0, and I'm very happy. Pot of Greed that can search you a card is very crazy, especially when you can keep adding it to your hand. So I'm finally glad engages to 0, and we'll have to see further down the list of what they changed also for Striker. That appears to be it for the banned cards. So just to recap in the banned section, I think they're all great hits. I don't think I would have changed anything on the banned or put them in any different place. I think it's very interesting to put those cards in the banned section to provide a healthier meta and nerf all the stronger decks right now. Let's go to the limited list. We have Danger Nessie, who was semi-limited, arguably the best Danger. So it makes sense for it to go to 1. Jackalope being the second best Danger, I wouldn't be surprised if Jackalope went to 1 in the future. Snake is Snake, so it's whatever. But I think that's a fine hit. It kind of limits the special summoning of extenders and drawing cards, so it's always fine. Pankratops is a weird hit. I think it's at 2 in the OCG. It's not really a card that is very worrying, so I'm not really sure why they decided it needed to go to 1. But I'm not sure. The only thing, like, if you go in Dinosaur, when we get the Jewel Beast, Agrosaurus or whatever it's called, and you can special summon it out like that, but I don't think it's that strong of a card. Going second, obviously you can special summon it, attack, and bait out cards and stuff like that, but it's not like a card that I was praying would go to 1 or something like that. I would have been fine with it at 3 still. So that's very strange. That's probably the only card right now currently that I'm registering in my head as a weird pick, but I don't really mind it. Next card is Servant of Endymion. I'm very fine with all of the Pendulum cards getting hit. Sorry, Triff. But Pendulum is very broken of a mechanic. Even if it wasn't the craziest deck in the meta, it's still one of the craziest mechanics. And I think it'll always be one of the most craziest mechanics. Just because you're essentially getting a soul charge every turn, which is pretty insane. And with the Pendulum cards right now, the Endymion archetype in specific, they're very crazy with their counters, with the mythical beasts, and they just provide a lot of advantage and negation for you. So I definitely like that they toned it down a bit. I certainly think it's still playable, it's just a lot slower when considering the Electromite got hit as well. So pretty much that. And then we have True King, Lithogasm, the Destroyer. I think that's a very interesting card to bring back to 1. In tangent with another card lower on the list that got hit, I'm pretty sure. But I think it's a fair trade-off. It goes into the extra deck a little bit, so it's always kind of an iffy topic when you're ripping cards out of your opponent's extra deck, but I think it's interesting enough to bring back, because I don't think we had enough time with it when we did have it. But we'll have to see how it plays out. The next card is Card of Demise, and I'm a very heavy advocate of draw cards like going to 0 or 1, especially cards that like you get a lot of advantage off of, like Card of Demise, especially in like rogue decks like Shrew Draco, uh, I can't even remember the other decks that play Card of Demise right now. I think Paleo Frogs played it. One of the meta decks of the format, Striker, had played it. It's just a card that just nets you too much advantage. And I believe one of the interactions, if you ash it, you can still activate another copy of Card of Demise. So I think that's too powerful of a card, especially when they don't really, decks don't care about discarding their hand and they can just take the free cards and set them all again. So I'm happy that it's at 1. Yeah, I'm happy it's a nerf to True Draco. I'm not really fond of that deck. So I think it's a good hit. Dragonic Diagram, also another hit to True Draco, obviously, but also a hit to Dinosaur, which would be a problematic deck in the future. So I think that's certainly a pretty good hit, especially going into this format. Obviously, all of these new decks are going to pop out, and I think Dinosaur would be one of those decks that, left untouched, it would go a little rampant. Into the Void, another one of those draw cards that should be hit, especially in the decks that don't care about discarding, similar to Card of Demise. But Into the Void, you're pretty much just playing another copy of Upstart, which you'd ran Upstart and then like 3 Into the Voids. You'd have 4 Upstarts in your deck. You're playing a 36 card deck. So I certainly think that's a good hit. Pot of Avarice, I don't really see an issue with this going to 3. I think they just wanted to test the waters of it going to 1. Probably going to see a lot more play in decks like Burning Abyss or Sky Striker, or any decks that just spam out their cards turn 1. But I don't think this is too bad of a card because it requires you having dedicated plays to the board turn 1, getting rid of like half your deck or extra deck, and then activating it. Otherwise, it's a dead card in your hand. So I'm fine with that. Sekka's Light, another one of those draw cards that you kind of have to build your deck around. In this case, Mermail, play 37 monsters and then the 3 spells. Thunder Dragon would also do the same on a similar fashion, and some other decks I think too would play like that. So, Burning Abyss. Sekka's Light, never too fond of it because you're drawing 2 and then you're returning it to draw 1, banishing it from the graveyard to draw 1, and just adding all those cards to your hand it's never good because that's like +2 essentially. In that case, that's pretty much pot of greed, or you're returning a card to add a card. But I don't know, Sekka's Light I'm just too iffy on, especially going into this new format. I'm very against draw cards. That's pretty much my stance. And we see Red Reboot to 1, which is a very peculiar hit. Seems like they're trying to boost out the trap decks, Altergeist, Guru, and all that stuff for back row. But I think it's strange, especially when you see the remainder of the list, how none of the trap decks are really touched. But I mean, a card that kind of stuns your opponent the whole turn, I don't think that's very healthy, just similar to Azathoth. So I can understand why it's at 1. Interestingly enough, I don't see Allure on the list, which is one of the cards I also would have wanted to 1. However, I guess it's fine, since they're kind of checking Orcust in a way, which is one of the decks that have used Allure, as well as Thunder Dragon, so they kind of need something to rely on, I guess. But in the future, I would like to see it to 1. Then we have Deep Sea Diva. Obviously, people knew this was going to be coming either to 2 or 3 with the new Diva support. Not really much to say. I thought this could have went to 3 immediately. Maybe they just want to test to see how well Mermail does with it at 2. I'm more interested in Tour Guide to 2, especially for BA. It's a very interesting hit for BA to have another Tour Guide in their deck, and certainly other decks that can utilize the extra card for extenders. Especially when there's so many mind controls, so you Tour Guide into the Sankin, make a link 2, then add a card. Very interesting to see what other decks will do. And then mind controls at 2, which I kind of agree with. Mind control 2 or 1 would have been fine. It's one of those cards that were powerful last format, but also they can be powerful in this format as well, given with all these hits. Not really seeing anything with Super Poly either on this list. Super Poly I would have liked on the list as well, but I guess they neglected that. And the rest of this is all hits. So we have Dark Arm Dragon to 3, which that's fine, nothing really to talk about there. It's not that crazy of a card. Lady Debug, I guess since they hit Salamangreat, they wanted to give it something back. So they gave it another normal summon, which is pretty fine on my part. And obviously we have Attic Niskers coming out, we have Marincess, and all the other Cybers, the Link Code Talker version. So that's fine. I think they could be supported with the extra normal summon. We have Morphing Jaw number 2, which is very strange when you look at Book of Moon, that they're bringing both back at the same time. Hopefully nothing crazy is going to come out of that. I doubt it, but we'll see. Performage Damage Juggler, it's might as well at this point. I think OCG has it at 3, and it's not really doing too much. Tribe Infecting Virus. I know a lot of people thought this would be too crazy of a card to get back with Mermail, which I don't understand, especially when we're getting the Nemesis cards that pretty much do the same thing. But that's beyond me. Tribe's very welcomed in the format at 3. Striker Kagari, especially when you consider engages to 0, I think it's fine to bring back to 3. I would have preferred it over cards like Widow Anchor to 3. So Kagari is fine at 3, I believe. It helps them get their recursion back and play at a slower pace instead of having engage at 3. So I'm very welcoming to that. Book of Moon, like I just said, is very fine, except when you're considering the jar cards. But Book of Moon, very good card. I've always advocated it for it to be at 3, especially right now. It's more powerful right now than it's going to be in a few months. Obviously, because if you're summoning a fusion monster in your extra monster zone, if you Book of Moon it, you can't really do much with your linking or summoning mechanics otherwise. So it's more powerful right now, and then obviously when we're going into the new Master Rule or Revision, it's going to be less powerful, so it's understandable that it's at 3. The rank up magic card is kind of peculiar. There's obviously some cards that we can still go into, like Dingirsu can go into VFD, which is very strange that they'd give us this back, but I guess it's not really a searchable card without Rusty, so it's less consistent. Solemn Warning to 3 when you're considering they're kind of boosting the trap decks is kind of weird, but I don't really think many decks are going to play all 9 relevant Solemns. I think Strike and Judgment are way better, but Warning is also a very nice card, so I think it's fine. And then Soul Drain, which is pretty interesting for this format. It's more relevant now than I think it ever was, so I don't think it'd be too bad, but I think it's a good check for certain decks, so I think it's fine. But let me know what you guys think below in the comments, how you guys feel about the ban list. I think this is like one of the best ban lists since we've had like 2013, 2014. It's a lot of hits, a lot of crazy bans, kind of just to check the meta and like stabilize things, make everything more fair. And I don't feel like we've had that for a while. But let me know what you guys think. If your deck got hit, feel free to comment below. We'll put F's in the chat. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a nice day. Bye.